My name is Adelaide Hart, and I'm about to tell you how my own sister tried to steal my $2.3 million beach house right out from under me, and how I turned her greed into the most spectacular public humiliation she'll never recover from. Let me set the scene for you. It's 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I'm standing in my kitchen overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, waves crashing against private shoreline that I worked 15 years to afford, when my phone buzzes with a family group chat notification. The message makes my blood run cold, then boil, then turn into something else entirely, something calculated, patient, and absolutely merciless. "The bank finally took your beach house," my sister Peyton had written, complete with a crying laughing emoji. "I'm buying it at auction for $400K, thanks for the investment opportunity, sis." Here, what you need to understand right now, before we go any further, that house wasn't in foreclosure. That house was never in foreclosure. In fact, just 3 days earlier, I had paid off the remaining $1.2 million mortgage in full, 30 years early, as a gift to myself for my 40th birthday. So when I saw that message, I didn't panic. I didn't call Peyton screaming. I didn't frantically dial my bank. No, I smiled. Because I finally had her exactly where I wanted her. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And listen, if you're the type of person who sides with manipulative, backstabbing family members, go ahead and skip the subscribe button. This story isn't for you. You need to understand how we got here. Peyton and I weren't always enemies. We were sisters, daughters of Walter and Corrine Hart, raised in a modest split level in suburban Connecticut. Dad owned a small accounting firm. Mom taught elementary school. We were comfortable but not wealthy. Peyton was 5 years younger than me, and growing up, I adored her. I was her protector, her confidant, her biggest cheerleader. When she wanted to quit gymnastics, I convinced her to stick with it. When she struggled with algebra, I tutored her every night for a month. When she got her heart broken at 16, I was the one who held her while she cried. But somewhere along the way, admiration curdled into resentment. I went to state college on scholarships, worked 2 jobs, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in software engineering. I got hired at a tech startup that eventually went public. I saved aggressively, invested wisely, lived below my means for years. Peyton, on the other hand, went to an expensive private university that Dad took out a second mortgage to afford. She changed majors 4 times, took 6 years to graduate with a degree in communications, and moved back home afterward with $170,000 in student debt and no job prospects. I never judged her for it. I helped her update her resume. I connected her with people in my network. I even paid off $30,000 of her student loans one Christmas because I wanted to help. But here's the thing about people like Peyton. Kindness isn't seen as generosity. It's seen as proof that you have more than you deserve. When I bought my first condo at 28, Peyton made snide comments about some people getting all the breaks. When I got promoted to senior engineer, she told our parents I was becoming a workaholic with no life. When I started dating Dominic, a brilliant architect I met at a charity fundraiser, she told Mom he was probably just using me for my money. The jealousy was palpable, toxic, and growing. But the real turning point came 5 years ago, when I bought the beach house. I found it during a solo weekend trip to Cape Luminaria, a stunning stretch of coastline 3 hours from the city. The property was a 3,500 square foot contemporary masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows, a wraparound deck, and 200 feet of private beach access. It had been on the market for 8 months and was priced at $1.9 million, below market value because the previous owner needed to sell quickly for a relocation. I toured it on a Saturday morning and made an offer that same afternoon. 20% down, 30-year mortgage, 3.2% interest rate locked in. It was a stretch financially, even with my salary, but it was also the home I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl drawing house plans in the margins of my notebooks. I was so excited to share the news with my family. I thought they'd be happy for me. At Sunday dinner, I showed them photos on my phone, talking about the renovation plans, how I wanted to host family gatherings there, how everyone would always be welcome. Mom seemed genuinely pleased, hugging me and saying how proud she was of all my hard work. Dad nodded approvingly, asking practical questions about property taxes and insurance. But Peyton sat there with her arms crossed, her face getting progressively tighter until she finally exploded. Must be nice to have money to burn on a vacation house while some of us can barely make rent. The table went silent. Peyton, that's not fair, Mom started, but Peyton cut her off. No, what's not fair is that Adelaide gets everything handed to her while I'm drowning in debt. I work just as hard as she does, but somehow I'm the failure and she's the golden child. I remember the feeling of that moment so vividly. The sick combination of hurt and anger, the realization that my own sister genuinely believed I hadn't earned what I had, that it was all just luck or favoritism. Nothing was handed to me, I said quietly, carefully. I worked 70-hour weeks for years. I lived with 3 roommates until I was 30. I bought my lunch from the dollar menu and drove a 15-year-old car. I made sacrifices. Oh, please, Peyton sneered. You got lucky with your tech job. Not all of us can be engineering geniuses. I should have let it go. I should have been the bigger person. But something in me snapped. You could have finished college in 4 years instead of 6. You could have accepted any of the 3 job offers I helped you get instead of turning them down because they were prestigious enough. You could have made different choices, Peyton. She left the dinner table and didn't speak to me for 6 months. The next 5 years, Peyton's resentment metastasized into something darker. She created a pattern of behavior that, in hindsight, was clearly building toward something catastrophic. It started small. She'd forget to invite me to family events, then act surprised when I showed up anyway. She'd make passive-aggressive comments on social media about people who flaunt their wealth. She told our cousin Gemma that I'd said her wedding venue was tacky. I'd never said any such thing. Then it got more calculated. She convinced Dad to invest in her business idea, a boutique marketing consultancy that folded within 8 months, taking $50,000 of Dad's retirement savings with it. When I gently suggested she needed to pay him back, she told our parents I'd called her a failure and a burden. She started dating Fletcher, a real estate investor with a questionable track record and an even more questionable moral compass. Together, they became insufferable, constantly talking about deals and opportunities and how smart money moves differently. At last year's Thanksgiving, Fletcher cornered me in the kitchen and spent 20 minutes trying to pitch me on an investment opportunity that was so obviously a pyramid scheme. I couldn't believe he thought I'd fall for it. When I politely declined, Peyton accused me of thinking I'm too good for their business ventures. But the real warning sign came 6 months ago. Peyton had somehow gotten access to my address, probably from Mom's address book, and started sending me information about beach house rental management companies, property flippers, and real estate attorneys who specialized in distressed properties. When I asked her about it, she claimed she was just trying to help because she'd heard through the grapevine that I was struggling with the mortgage payments. I'd never missed a single payment. In fact, I'd been making double payments for the past 3 years, aggressively paying down the principal. But Peyton had created an entire fantasy in her head where I was financially overextended, where the beach house was going to drag me under, where she'd swoop in and rescue the property and profit handsomely in the process. I didn't engage with her delusions. I just filed the information away, a growing dossier of her obsession with my life, my success, my house. And then came my 40th birthday. Turning 40 felt significant to me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It was a milestone that demanded reflection, and I decided, a grand gesture to myself. I'd been divorced from Dominic for 2 years by then. The split had been amicable. We wanted different things in life, realized it early enough to part as friends. He kept the city apartment, I kept the beach house. Work was going extraordinarily well. I'd been promoted to VP of engineering, leading a team of 60 people building AI infrastructure that was revolutionizing data security. My compensation package included a significant stock grant that had vested fully. I sat down with my financial advisor, Lynette, and we did the math. I had enough liquid assets to pay off the beach house mortgage entirely and still maintain a comfortable emergency fund and retirement portfolio. "Do it," Lynette said, grinning. "Nothing feels better than owning your home free and clear. Plus, at your income level, the mortgage interest deduction isn't as beneficial anymore." So on Friday, May 17th, I wired $1,247,893.42 to Pacific Coastal Bank, paying off the remaining balance on my mortgage in full. The payoff was scheduled to process the following Monday. I'd receive confirmation paperwork within 5 business days. The house would be completely mine, no liens, no debt, just pure ownership. I celebrated quietly that weekend, sitting on my deck with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over the ocean, feeling profoundly grateful for the life I'd built. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't tell my parents yet. I wanted to surprise them in person at Sunday dinner the following week. I didn't say a word to anyone except Lynette and my attorney. And that silence, that discretion, became the foundation of my revenge. Because on Tuesday evening, 3 days after I'd paid off the mortgage, Peyton made her move. The Hart family group chat had always been benign. Birthday wishes, holiday coordination, mom sharing recipes nobody asked for, dad posting dad jokes that made everyone groan. But at 9:47 p.m. on that Tuesday, Peyton transformed it into a weapon. "The bank finally took your beach house," she'd written. "I'm buying it at auction for $400K, thanks for the investment opportunity, sis. House's money." Below the text were 3 attachments: a screenshot of what looked like a foreclosure listing, a photo of the beach house, one she'd clearly pulled from my social media, and a bank routing slip showing a wire transfer of $200,000. Within seconds, the chat exploded. "Mom, what? Adelaide, is this true? Why didn't you tell us you were having financial trouble?" "Dad, Peyton, what is going on? Have you spoken to your sister?" "Peyton, I tried, but you know how Adelaide is, too proud to ask for help. Fletcher and I heard about the foreclosure through his real estate contacts. The auction is next Friday. I already wired Dad half the down payment since he's going in on it with me as an investment property. We'll flip it and split the profits 60-40. My hands were shaking as I read the messages, but not from panic, from pure, distilled rage. She hadn't just lied. She created an elaborate fiction and dragged our elderly father into financing it. "Dad, Adelaide, please call me. I don't understand what's happening." I could picture him, 73 years old, still sharp but increasingly dependent on his kids to help navigate modern financial matters. Confused, worried, already mentally reconciling himself to losing $200,000 if it meant helping his daughters. If you're still watching and your heart is racing right now, drop a like on this video. And seriously, anyone who thinks Peyton deserves that house can click away. We don't want you here. I didn't respond to the family chat immediately. Instead, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, Vivienne Cross, who specialized in real estate law and had handled the purchase of my beach house. "Vivienne, I need you to document something," I said, explaining the situation in clinical detail. "Oh, this is rich," she said, and I could hear her typing rapidly. "Wire fraud, potentially. Filing a false foreclosure claim is a felony in most states. Involving your father might constitute elder financial abuse depending on how she misrepresented the situation. Adelaide, you could have her arrested." "Not yet," I said. "First, I want her to hang herself with enough rope that there's no possible way out." "I love how you think," Vivienne said. "I'll prepare documentation of the timeline and your actual mortgage status. We'll need it for later." The second call was to Pacific Coastal Bank, specifically to my mortgage officer, Thaddeus Nguyen, who'd helped me refinance 2 years earlier. "Thaddeus, I need you to do something unusual," I said. Someone is claiming my property is in foreclosure. I need you to not correct this publicly for exactly 1 week. There was a pause. Adelaide, I can't participate in fraud. It's not fraud, I interrupted. The property isn't in foreclosure. You know that, I know that, the bank knows that. I'm asking you to simply not proactively announce that fact while I deal with a family situation. If anyone directly asks the bank, tell them the truth. But don't send out any press releases or make any public statements about my mortgage status. Another pause. This is about your sister, isn't it? How did you? She called us 4 times last month asking about your payment history. We told her we couldn't discuss your account. She got very aggressive with our customer service team. My stomach dropped. This was even more premeditated than I'd realized. Will you help me? I asked. 1 week, Thaddeus agreed. But Adelaide, be careful. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. Everything I'm going to do, I promised, will be completely, utterly, perfectly legal. The third call was to Fletcher, Peyton's boyfriend, from a number he wouldn't recognize. I disguised my voice slightly and introduced myself as Cordelia Ashford from Pacific Coastal Bank's foreclosure division. Mr. Fletcher Reinhardt, I'm calling regarding the Cape Luminaria property at 847 Seaside Drive. We've received some inquiries about this property potentially being available for auction, but our records don't show it in foreclosure proceedings. Can you clarify your interest in this property? Fletcher's voice turned immediately slick, salesman smooth. Oh, yes, Ms. Ashford. My girlfriend's sister owns that property, Adelaide Hart. Our understanding is that she's significantly behind on payments and the foreclosure process has begun. We'd like to make a pre-auction offer to expedite the process. I see, I said, taking notes. And who provided you with information about the foreclosure status? We have contacts in the real estate investment community, Fletcher said vaguely. Is the property available or not? I'll need to verify some information and call you back, I said, then hung up before he could press further. I had what I needed. Fletcher had made a materially false statement to someone he believed was a bank representative. That phone call, which I'd recorded, perfectly legal in my state with single-party consent, was evidence of his complicity. Now it was time to play the game. I waited until 11:30 p.m. to respond to the family chat, letting the tension build, letting Peyton think she'd won. Adelaide, Dad, I need to talk to you privately. Can you call me? He called within 30 seconds, his voice strained with worry. Sweetheart, what's going on? Are you really losing the house? Dad, listen to me very carefully, I said, keeping my voice calm. The house is not in foreclosure. I'm not behind on any payments. In fact, I paid off the entire mortgage on Friday. I own the house free and clear. Silence. Then what is Peyton talking about? He asked, confusion evident. That's what I'm trying to figure out, I lied smoothly. But Dad, I need you to do something for me. I need you to not tell Peyton or anyone else what I just told you. Not yet. Why? Because if Peyton genuinely believes the house is in foreclosure, I want to understand how she came to that belief before I correct it. Someone may have scammed her, or she may have misunderstood something. Either way, I want to get to the bottom of it without embarrassing her. This was brilliant, if I do say so myself. I was positioning myself as the protective older sister, looking out for Peyton even as she tried to steal from me. Are you sure? Dad asked hesitantly. I already wired her $200,000. My heart clenched. You did. Dad, I need you to contact your bank first thing tomorrow morning and see if you can reverse that wire. Tell them you think you've been involved in a fraudulent transaction. But Peyton wouldn't. Dad, trust me, make the call. He agreed, though I could hear the heartbreak in his voice. No parent wants to believe their child would deceive them. After we hung up, I went back to the family chat. Adelaide, Peyton, can you send me the details of this foreclosure auction? I'm not aware of any proceedings against my property, and I'd like to understand what's happening. Peyton, Adelaide, stop being in denial. I know this is hard, but Fletcher has connections in the industry. The bank is being discreet about it to preserve your privacy, but the auction is definitely happening. You should be thanking me for stepping in to keep the house in the family. Adelaide, I appreciate your concern, but I really need to see the documentation. Can you send me the auction listing number? 20 minutes passed. Then, Peyton, I'll have Fletcher send it to you tomorrow. It's late and he's already in bed. Honestly, Adelaide, you're being pretty ungrateful right now. I'm trying to help you. She didn't have documentation because none existed. She was stalling, hoping I'd panic and confirm her fantasy. Instead, I went to bed and slept like a baby. Over the next 6 days, I watched Peyton destroy herself with methodical precision. On Wednesday, she posted on Facebook, "Sometimes you have to save your family from themselves. So grateful for real estate investors like Fletcher who help people navigate difficult financial situations. Family first # real estate investor." The post generated dozens of comments from people who knew our family, asking if everything was okay, if I needed help, expressing shock that I was losing my house. I didn't correct a single person. I let the narrative build. On Thursday, Peyton called Mom, who then called me in tears. "Adelaide, why didn't you tell me you were struggling? I would have helped. We could have figured something out together." "Mom, I promise you I'm not struggling," I said gently. "There's been a misunderstanding, but I'm handling it. Please trust me." On Friday, Fletcher posted his own message on LinkedIn, excited to announce a new investment opportunity in Cape Luminaria, acquiring a premium oceanfront property at 80% below market value. Sometimes the best deals come from helping family. Real estate investing opportunity knocks. The professional nature of this post was particularly galling. He was using my tragedy, a tragedy that didn't exist, to build his personal brand. On Saturday, Peyton sent me a direct message. "Adelaide, I know you're embarrassed, but we need to talk about what happens after the auction. Fletcher and I are planning to turn the house into a rental property. We'd be willing to let you rent it from us at a discount if you want to stay there sometimes. Family rate." The audacity was breathtaking. On Sunday, Dad tried one more time to reverse his wire transfer, but the bank told him it had already been deposited into Peyton's account. He'd lost $200,000. On Monday, exactly 1 week after I'd paid off my mortgage, I initiated the final phase. At 10:00 a.m., I called Pacific Coastal Bank from my office, using my personal cell phone. "Good morning, Pacific Coastal Bank. This is Julian speaking. How may I help you?" "Hi, Julian. This is Adelaide Hart. I need to speak with someone in your executive office about a serious matter involving my property and potential fraud." "One moment, please." I was transferred to Thaddeus, who transferred me to the bank's VP of Risk Management, a woman named Vivica Sutherland. "Ms. Hart, I understand there's a situation we need to discuss," she said, her voice professional and crisp. "Yes, my property at 847 Seaside Drive is being falsely advertised as being in foreclosure. Multiple people have approached the bank asking about purchasing it at auction. I paid off my mortgage in full last week, and I need the bank to make a public statement correcting this misinformation immediately." "I see. And do you know who's spreading this false information?" "My sister and her boyfriend. I have evidence that they've solicited investment money from my elderly father based on these lies. I believe they may be attempting wire fraud." "Ms. Hart, I'm going to put you on hold while I verify your account status and consult with our legal team. This is a serious allegation." I was placed on hold for 7 minutes. When Vivica returned, her tone had shifted from professional to coldly furious. "Ms. Hart, I've confirmed that your mortgage was paid in full on May 20th. Your property has never been in foreclosure proceedings with this bank. Furthermore, our fraud division has flagged multiple inquiries about your property from individuals falsely claiming to be buyers in a foreclosure auction. We're prepared to make a formal statement and, if you wish, to refer this matter to law enforcement." "I wish," I said simply. "We'll issue a statement within the hour. I'm also going to call the individual who's been most persistently contacting us. a Mr. Fletcher Reinhardt. I believe he deserves a direct conversation about misrepresenting foreclosure proceedings. Thank you, Vivica. Ms. Hart, I hope your sister faces appropriate consequences. What she's done is unconscionable. The bank's statement went out at 11:15 a.m. via email to anyone who'd inquired about my property and was posted publicly on their website. Pacific Coastal Bank has become aware of false information circulating regarding the property at 847 Seaside Drive, Cape Luminaria. This property is not in foreclosure proceedings. The property owner, Ms. Adelaide Hart, paid off her mortgage in full on May 20th and owns the property free and clear. There is no auction scheduled, and any claims to the contrary are completely false. Pacific Coastal Bank takes fraud and misrepresentation extremely seriously. We have referred this matter to local law enforcement and will cooperate fully with any investigation. Anyone who has invested money based on false foreclosure claims should contact the authorities immediately. Pacific Coastal Bank stands behind our valued customer, Ms. Adelaide Hart, and her legitimate ownership of this property. At 11:27 a.m., Vivica called Fletcher personally. I don't know exactly what was said, but Fletcher called Peyton immediately afterward, and Peyton's resulting meltdown could probably be heard from space. My phone started ringing at 11:35 a.m. Peyton, I didn't answer. She called 17 times in a row. Then came the text messages. What did you do? The bank is lying. You sabotaged Emmy. This is fraud. I'm going to sue YOU. Dad gave me that money fair and square. Fletcher says you've destroyed his reputation. Each message more unhinged than the last. At noon, I responded with a single message. Peyton, I don't know what you're talking about. I paid off my mortgage last week. The house was never in foreclosure. If someone told you otherwise, you should ask them why they lied to you. Also, Dad would like his $200,000 back by the end of the month. Her response came 30 seconds later. I don't have IT. Fletcher and I already spent it on consulting fees and property research. You owe me for emotional damages. I screenshot every single message and forwarded them to Vivienne, my attorney. That Sunday, Mom and Dad requested a family meeting at their house. I arrived early. Peyton arrived late, Fletcher in tow, both looking like they'd aged 5 years in a week. The atmosphere was glacial. Dad spoke first, his voice shaking with an emotion I'd never heard from him before, pure disappointment. Peyton, I want to understand what happened. Did you genuinely believe Adelaide's house was in foreclosure, or did you make that up? Peyton's face crumpled. Fletcher's sources said. What sources? Dad interrupted. I've contacted 3 different real estate professionals this week. None of them have any record of that property being in foreclosure. The bank has confirmed Adelaide paid off her mortgage. So where did this information come from? Fletcher jumped in, his voice defensive. We have contacts who track distressed properties. There must have been a clerical error. A clerical error that cost me $200,000. Dad's voice was steel. A clerical error that you used to convince me to wire you money immediately without proper verification. We were trying to help, Peyton shouted. Adelaide is always so secretive about her finances. We thought she was in trouble. I spoke for the first time, my voice deadly calm. Peyton, you called my bank 4 times last month asking about my payment history. You sent me information about property flippers and foreclosure attorneys. You've been obsessed with my beach house for years. This wasn't about helping me. This was about taking something you thought you deserved more than I did. That's not true. Then explain the Facebook post. Explain the LinkedIn post from Fletcher. Explain why you told Dad the auction was next Friday when there was no auction scheduled. Explain why you wired yourself $200,000 from Dad's retirement savings before even verifying the property was actually in foreclosure. The room fell silent. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked broken. Peyton was cornered and she knew it. I want my money back, Dad said quietly. You have 30 days. We don't have it, Fletcher admitted. We used it for... I don't care what you used it for. You obtained that money under false pretenses. That's fraud. You have 30 days to return it or I'm pressing charges. Peyton's face went white. Dad, you wouldn't. You stole from me, Peyton. You lied to me. You tried to steal from your sister. What did you think was going to happen? Peyton and Fletcher broke up within 2 weeks. Turns out, when your elaborate scheme to steal a beach house falls apart, relationship dynamics shift pretty dramatically. Fletcher, trying to save himself, admitted that he'd encouraged Peyton's delusions about my financial situation because he genuinely thought he could flip the property for a massive profit. He provided written testimony that Peyton had been obsessively researching my property for over a year. Peyton, unable to repay Dad's $200,000, was forced to sell her condo and move back in with our parents at age 35. The humiliation was exquisite. She also lost her job. Remember that LinkedIn post Fletcher made? Turns out her employer saw it and asked some pointed questions about why she was involved in questionable real estate deals during work hours using company resources. She was terminated for ethics violations. Dad did eventually get most of his money back, though it took 8 months and the threat of a lawsuit. As for me, I'm writing this from my deck, watching the sunset over my completely paid off, fully owned, absolutely not in foreclosure beach house. The house is now worth approximately $2.8 million, by the way. Waterfront property values have soared in the past year. Peyton doesn't speak to me anymore. Mom tries to play peacekeeper, but even she has privately admitted that Peyton went too far this time. At this year's Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at the beach house for the first time. Mom, Dad, and several cousins came. Peyton was conspicuously absent. As we sat around the table, Dad raised his glass and said, "I want to toast Adelaide for working hard, achieving her dreams, and handling a terrible situation with more grace than I could have managed." Grace, that's what he called it. I call it justice. All right, we've reached the end of this story. Before you go, I need you to comment below and tell me 3 major lessons you learned from this story. What would you have done differently? How would you have handled a family member trying to steal from you? Drop those lessons in the comments right now. Also, tell me what time it is where you're watching from and what city or country you're in. I love seeing where these stories reach people around the world. And if you made it this far, you're clearly invested in stories about justice and revenge. Hit that subscribe button because I post new stories every week about people who refuse to be victims and fight back against those who underestimate them. Remember, family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, respect, and honesty. Peyton learned that the hard way. Until next time, protect what's yours, trust your instincts, and never let anyone, not even family, make you doubt your worth. This is Adelaide Hart, signing off from my beautiful, fully paid-for beach house that absolutely nobody is taking from me. Ever.